Hello and welcome to another episode of We Are the Pride, a Brisbane Lions podcast. I'm Ash McPhee and I'm now joined by Al McGovern, and we're about to discuss what happened in round one.
Welcome back, I guess.
Yeah, if welcome is the word we're looking for.
Yeah, it was an interesting weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't feel too welcome at the moment.
No, a little disheartened, but it's a long season.
Yeah, and interestingly, I don't think Eric Hipwood feels very welcome for unknown reason. I mean, the guy kicked 3 goals. So.
Yeah, I thought he had not bad a game.
Yeah,
to be honest.
but if you look on the socials, he lost it for us.
Oh, no, I didn't see any of that.
Yeah,
I have a running joke with my father, who's a big Eric Hipwood fan, and he may or may not be listening to this as it gets uploaded later on. That every time Hipwood kicks a goal, he sends me a big Hipwood in our messenger for it,
yeah.
and I do the same for Danaher, and I always stir him up and say Hipwood's doing nothing, all that sort of stuff. But I don't genuinely think that. I do think Hipwood is a good player, and I think he had a pretty good game on the weekend.
I think his season last year was very underrated as well. Like, a lot of people in their early season predictions were like, "Oh, he's got to kick more goals." And I went back and had a look. He kicked 40 goals last year, right? And you got to think the other two main forwards up there, they kicked 50 plus each. I think one of them might have kicked 60. So 40 goals for your third string forward is pretty bloody good.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, between him, Danaher, and Cameron, they kicked a massive boatload of goals between them.
Yeah, and that was a big feature of last year too, because you think the previous years, all the talk was about the bulk of our scoring coming from the midfield. You know, it was like going back to under 12s days where your mids just kick it over the forwards' heads.
Yeah, exactly.
But last year I felt, I mean, look, Joe's kicked 150 goals in 3 years for us.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, in one of those years, he had a broken shoulder for most of it.
Yeah.
You know, and Chuck missed a lot of goals last year, went on a really quiet period for a while where he didn't kick any. I mean, he still got all Australian, which is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And, you know, like he's probably I think he's kicked over 200 goals for us in his short time at the club as well. So, like.
Yeah, what's coming up on what, 5 years for him? 6 years?
Yeah, don't forget he missed most of his first year.
Yeah.
With that, was it a Liz Frank or a syndesmosis, one of those two?
Yeah, that was when there was a lot of players in the league getting similar injuries at the same time. The AFL goes through these weird moments where there's always a weird niche injury and everyone's getting it at the same time. Like remember when it was osteitis pubis? Everyone was getting that for a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was, you know, like guys of my generation were the first ones to sort of really like mid to late 90s start to really get that. And then it just became a thing for such a long time. But then, yeah, the Liz Franks and the syndesmosis and the plantar fasciitis, they would have like all those foot injuries.
Yep.
But hopefully we don't get any more. And speaking of injuries, there was one yesterday that nobody seems to have picked up on because when it happened, Freo kicked I can't remember who it was, I don't really care. One of the Freo players kicked a miraculous goal as Jasper Fletcher got chicken winged.
Yes.
So I don't know.
Off the ball and right at the corner of the camera. If you weren't paying attention to him directly, you wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, and that's it. And like no commentators mentioned it. You don't see it mentioned anywhere in the media, except if you look at the player stats on the AFL app, it has him listed as injured.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I've spoken to about 3 other people. 2 of them saw it. 3 out of 4 people I've spoken to now have seen it, including yourself.
Yeah, well, I don't recall if Fagan mentioned anything in the press conference afterwards about that one. I don't think he did. He touched on the other injury, I guess, which we were probably about to get to, which was something you kind of foreshadowed a little bit last week, or were worried about anyway.
Yes.
With Connor McKenna coming back in. You thought it was a little too early last week.
Yeah, look, I just felt they should have held him over for the week, given him the bye, you know, played a long game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big season. I completely agree with you. And now it's unfortunately come true where he probably did need that extra week, maybe even after the bye.
And of all the positional players we can't afford to lose, it's a running halfback.
Yeah, we seem to be losing a few of those at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah,
2 and 2 games.
yeah. But look, I did feel, and I think I sort of said wasn't sure on how Noah Answorth would go.
Mm.
I thought he did pretty well, and I noticed. I don't know if you looked at the stats, but apparently he went at 100% efficiency,
Really?
and
No, I didn't
he's
notice that.
probably got about 16 or so disposals. Maybe he got a couple more,
Yeah.
and he's got it 100%.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm gonna have to look that one up. No,
Yeah,
I thought visually that he had a pretty decent game for his first one back in quite a long time because he didn't play too many last season. Not from memory anyway.
I think he replaced Zorko for 1 or 2 weeks at one stage.
Yeah. So I was impressed that he did so well coming back, but I didn't think that he was on that, 100% efficiency
Yeah,
level.
it's a weird stat though because remember, what was that bald bloke at St Kilda, Zach Jones?
Yes.
He, I remember being at a game against St Kilda and he kept kicking it to our guys, but he was kicking it 40 plus meters every time.
Mm.
And I looked at the stats tracker afterwards, and it had him at like 85% efficiency or something close to
Mm.
that. I'm thinking, no, I don't know. But then I did call into old mate Derwayne Russell at SEN,
Yeah.
and he said that how it works is if someone kicks the ball 40 meters plus and it doesn't go out of bounds, it's classed as an effective disposal.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. I would never have guessed that.
so yeah, and I don't know how that works, but yeah, unfortunately for us, Ryan Lester didn't have too many effective disposals that I could see.
No, and he wasn't alone, to be
Yeah,
honest. You and I was actually speaking briefly during the game, and there was a few players that we both kind of called out that could have definitely had better games.
yeah, and ironically, James Ash, who I can't even remember him playing for us, it was that long ago. But some people were still ranting and raving and carrying on about him and wanting to boo him. But they had good reason because every time he kicked it to one of our guys or kicked it out of bounds.
Yeah.
So him and Lester kind of cancelled each other out.
He was I'm just looking at the stats now. He was their Frio's fourth highest rated player for the game, which
Yeah.
it's pretty surprising, to be honest.
Well, it's funny because I think we've talked about Zach Bailey had a pretty quiet round zero.
Mm.
And he was our fifth highest rated player. I've actually got it written down in my notes here.
Yep.
And yeah, Big O in that round zero as well was in our top 5 rated players. And I think we all agreed that the coding pretty much won on the night. So,
Yes.
and Big O probably had a bit of a shocker yesterday.
Mm. Yeah, wasn't his best. I think he was probably taken by surprise a little bit at just how good Jackson ended up being. I mean, he's been rumored to be, doing pretty well for a while, and there was a lot of, media talk about, has he earned the high paycheck that he was brought over for? And I think he did in that game.
Well, I've heard that he's about 9 foot tall, has guns like Hulk Hogan,
Yep.
and can kick the ball 100 meters on his wrong foot.
Yep.
That's how much the media talk him up. But I think he kind of almost showed that last night. And I did say that I felt that he would be pretty lively early, and he was.
Mm.
But he also drifting forward. Big O had no idea what to do.
No.
He's got look, I love him to death, but he's not I don't think he's played too much actual defensive football in his life.
No. So no defensive. I mean, but he's usually not bad when he drifts forward. I know, like we're talking about Luke Jackson drifting forward and him being on him, but when Oscar goes forward, he tends to have a pretty good game, but he hasn't done that recently. But I have lots of memories over the recent years of him being the guy that would take a massive clunk and he can effortlessly kick it 50 meters.
Yes.
But he didn't, he seemed to have an off week because he wasn't bad last week, but he had a really bad game on Sunday.
He did. And yeah, I mean, look, I think he'll bounce back.
Mm.
I don't even know who's playing in the ruck for Collingwood these days.
Mason Cox.
Look, he should beat him, shouldn't he?
Goggles boy. Yeah.
Let's face it.
He should.
Yeah, like
I don't know if he's their main ruck, but he's the first one that came to my head.
yeah. What happened to that Kruger guy? He was a ruck for them at one point, and
I'm not sure. They've bled a few rucks recently because obviously there's the whole Grundy controversy from a couple of years ago. He's on his third club now.
Yeah, well, I saw he come crashing back down this round. He didn't quite dominate like he did the previous round.
Yeah. And we did some predictions last week. Some of them were spot on. Some of them were well off the mark.
Yes, especially one of mine.
Do you want to go into those now, or?
Yeah, well, I mean,
we can just quickly touch on them.
Completely got it wrong on Chuck. At one stage, I wasn't even sure he was at the stadium, but he did pop up down back at one point.
Yep.
Look, he obviously, whether he's been told to go and do a bit of ball hunting or he's just decided, look, I need to get some hands on the lever. He had a crack, but yeah, look, it was. Yeah, I said earlier something about going back to under 12 days. He was that guy that he was like pretty much getting a cold out in the Arctic down in the goal square for most of the game. There was a big period where the ball just didn't go down there. And again, I harp on this every week, but when the ball was kicked to him, which was very rare, but when it wasn't kicked to him, it was kicked near him.
Yeah.
So, look, I don't know. That's obviously our midfield was different this week.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just keep saying it. Just if we're running forward, give the ball to Hugh every time.
Yeah, and we did predict that Sarong, Brayshaw, and Amiss would have really good games against us, and all three of them had really good games against us. I was a little off when I predicted that Michael Walters would have a great game. He had a really terrible game. Yeah, he's one of their lowest rated players for the game. But the other three were three of their best players. I mean, Sarong set a club record for disposals.
Yeah, and on Sarong, so I was having a look, and I think we had a brief discussion, and I ended up having another mate message me about 2:00 in the morning about Dev Rob. Luckily, I was about to get up for work anyway, but and it was about his lack of disposals. But then he said to me, "Oh, yeah, but I think he was tagging Sarong." Which is kind of interesting because I don't know if that worked too well.
I don't recall seeing that, but if that was the case, he didn't. Safe to say he didn't do a good job.
Yeah, but with Brayshaw too. Look, I think I said last week that he gets a lot of the ball, but doesn't seem to hurt you as much. And I was surprised when I looked at the stats before and saw that he had 34. I was like, can I remember seeing him 3 times?
Yeah. Well, he has 433 meters gained.
Yeah.
Which is probably, I mean, he's got 10 clearances to his name as well.
So yeah, he's clearly just one of those guys that blends in, I think. I mean, there's probably a lot of guys about his size of short black hair in their team, I suppose.
Yeah, no, you're right there. There's a lot of guys in the league where they rack up the stats, but you do wonder how much impact they actually have. I think it's safe to say that he did have a pretty good impact, but I remember noticing, particularly Amiss, having like everything he did seemed to have a direct impact on their scoreboard, whereas Sarong not so much. It was a bit more subtle, his impact, I think.
Yeah, and I think when Amiss went off injured, I think Josh Tracy did pretty well for them, which wasn't good for us. I don't know if Jack Payne would have made much of a difference.
I wouldn't have thought so, especially after his round 1 performance.
Yeah, but like he's a massive man. I don't think there's sort of anyone in his sort of size range of 3 hours forward. Like Amiss and Tracy's built like oh God, he's nearly built like an Adonis, but I don't think he's quite up in that height. So Gardner, while he was on the ground, and who else did we have that was sort of I think Berry was dropping back again, but he's like, what is he, 6'4"? So those guys probably were about the right size and height. But we lost Gardner.
Yeah, that was more of a precaution, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
more than an actual confirmed injury. I think they were just not willing to take a risk on him because he was feeling a bit tight.
I think he was listed as injured with knee in brackets. But that doesn't mean that he's injured. It could mean that he copped a corky or he copped a bit of what they call a stinger.
Yeah. I think with the bye next week, I think the club was much more willing to just take guys out and give them that a little extra rest.
Yeah.
Because McKenna didn't have a full-blown injury, did he? It was just kind of, he was a bit tight and they were a bit worried, so they were being a bit cautious with him.
I think in commentary they said McKenna is out of the game with his hamstring wrapped up. They didn't actually say he's injured his hamstring.
Yeah, I think they said something about tightness at one point.
Yeah.
So I think it could have been a precaution. So he may be good to go after the bye. But with the official injury report does come out Tuesday, so we will know. We're recording this Monday night, so tomorrow we should have an idea of which guys actually did get injured and which ones just kind of had a little bit of a break.
That's it. But I guess, even if it's just a hamstring tightness, I wouldn't play him next game, even though it's 2 weeks away.
It's a big game though against Collingwood, and we'll be going into that winless. And there's a chance Collingwood will, but they've got another game next week.
I really want Collingwood to win in round 2.
You want them to win there?
Yeah, I never want Collingwood to win, but I want them to win this time. I don't want them to come into a game against us where they get a whole week of the media absolutely panning them and saying these guys are no good, they've broken down, they sacked the coach, drop half their players to the VFL, because we all know what happens when that goes down.
Yeah, you're right. But they've kind of been doing that a little bit this week. I haven't really been paying attention to too many footy shows, but I did accidentally download an episode of the the podcast that Fox Footy has at the end of the round.
Is that the one with Lee Montagna and
David King and usually rotating host?
Oh, it's not the final siren. It's something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something to basically wrap up the round. They do it straight after the last game of the round, which was ironically ours. So they talked about us because our game was fresh. Lee Montagna basically wrote us off and said that contenders don't give up 8 goals in a row and all this sort of stuff. And then they went pretty hard on Collingwood as well. So, yeah, I think Collingwood's probably going to have a pretty good game this weekend. So maybe they'll go in to our game with a bit more confidence, and maybe we'll be the ones. We desperately need that win.
Yeah, look, we need to be the cornered Tigers, I think. That seems to be, when there's something at stake, it seems to be when the boys really go to work. I guess, look, there's been something at stake both games, but even as supporters, we've all just gone, oh, well, it's only round 0, it's only round 1.
Yeah, you say something's at stake. 4 points is at stake, I guess. But really, the game is so early in the season that it doesn't really matter. It's not like they're fighting for a spot in the 8 or a spot in the 4 or a grand final spot or things like that. That's when they kind of really pull their finger out and give their best performances. But I think there is a bit of the boys going, it's so early. We got plenty of time. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Look, I turned the TV off as soon as the final siren went yesterday. Look, I don't mind Matthew Pavlich in special comments.
Yeah.
He gives pretty good insight, but there's no way I was going to sit there watching him interviewing Dockers players.
No.
I was like, look, I've got to get up early. I'm going to bed.
Yep.
But I did stupidly have a flick through the socials.
Yeah, brave.
Not a good move.
Yeah, no. I basically only use Reddit these days. I'm not on Facebook or anything much these days, but I do have a look at the Reddit ones sometimes, and they do make me laugh because the fans on the Brisbane Lions Reddit and the AFL Reddit actually are all usually very intense.
Yeah, I find Reddit's usually pretty good, pretty helpful in some aspects, but after you told me you were on the Brisbane Lions one last season, I had a bit of a look around, and there's some interesting stuff taking place on there.
Oh yeah,
but it's basically Facebook was Sack Hipwood send 3/4 of the team down to the VFL. It's not Fagan's fault. But then there was also it is Fagan's fault people as well.
Yep.
Who else? Sack Lockie Neal for not playing.
Yep.
I mean, can we
all
stop?
very rational responses?
Yeah. Can we stop recruiting Irish guys? Because that one guy, Colin Begley, back in the early 2000s was no good. So that means the rest of them are no good.
Yeah, exactly.
What's Luke Power doing these days? Can we get him to pull the boots back on?
Yep.
He's coaching Carlton's VFL. Sadly. Although when we played Carlton last year in the VFL, I was at the game and he was walking down the race and he gave me a nod. So he obviously still has a little bit of love for Lions supporters.
Yeah, I think a lot of those premiership fellas do. I mean, the ones that are coaching senior teams elsewhere, they have to hide it a little bit more. But I mean, Vossi still comes to a lot of events and all that sort of stuff. So you can tell that it's the passion's still there, the love's still there.
I think, and look, I could be wrong on this, but I think the only guy who missed the Hall of Fame last year was Craig McRae, with good reason, I guess.
Yeah, because that happened the week of the grand final, didn't it?
I thought it was in the bye round in the start of the finals, but you could be right because there was
I think there was definitely. It might not have been Hall of Fame. One of the award ceremonies was definitely in the week leading to the grand final.
Yeah, they had the Hall of Fame and the reunion dinner the same night.
Yeah,
I was actually listening to Chris Johnson talking about it this morning when I was at work. Actually, this is a pretty good thing to recommend too. So he was on. I can't remember the name of the podcast. So, it's run by Tommy Sheridan, who used to play for the Dockers and the Giants.
Oh yeah,
and it was like a 2.5 hour interview with Chris Johnson, detailing all the way from Fitzroy and all his time through the Bears. Spoke really, really well about Ackermanis.
Yep,
which made me feel good because I loved Acker.
Oh yeah. The fans loved him, and his teammates mostly loved him.
Well, it's interesting because the way Jono spoke about Acker was he kind of hinted that there was only a small group of guys who wanted him out.
Yeah.
But in the end, they convinced everybody generally as a whole to vote that way.
Yeah.
And it sounded like it was Lee, Voss, and maybe one or two other power brokers.
Yep.
Which your captain and your coach are telling you to get rid of this bloke. What are you going to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, look, it was good. And he spoke about the Hall of Fame and the reunion. Spoke really well. So if anyone wants to listen to a pretty good non-cliched podcast with Chris Johnson, I don't know if there's any other episodes of that one, but that's the only one I listen to. But anyway, I digress.
Should we get on to our ticks and crosses, perhaps?
Yeah, because I don't want to talk too much more about the game. So I will start with the ticks.
Yep.
Just give me a second.
Are we going to go one for one, or are we going to go all?
Nah, we'll just do them all in one hit.
All right.
So I'll do all mine, and then you can come up with the crosses.
We'll rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, because all right. So now my first tick, it's a pretty silly one, but from all reports, our flight to Perth arrived on time.
Fantastic news.
So that's a big tick.
That's a big one. Underrated.
Yeah. All right. So now into the real tick. So my first tick is Cal Archie.
Oh, yeah.
Again, our most consistent player, never gave up running, competed all game. Now, stats don't really show it. The AFL fantasy doesn't show it. It's the stuff he does for me is what he does off the ball. He's hard running, and he just seemed to pop up. We've talked about him a fair bit already.
Yeah,
he's just so underrated. And again, he did a couple of things here and there at key moments. They didn't win us the game. Obviously, no one won us the game, but he put in a lot more effort than a lot of other guys. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So my next tick is Eric Hipwood.
Yep. Okay. Yep.
He had some quiet patches, as Eric does, but I don't know if they are quiet patches because I think a bit like Cal, he does a bit of running off the ball. Look, he doesn't have the speed and endurance he had before his ACL, but he still does a lot of hard running off the ball. And what he did do, though, was he bobbed up with some key goals. I mean, we got a bit lucky early on in the game with some good umpiring that went our way. But look, I felt Eric did well. And like he bombed one from outside 50 or just on the paint of 50, as the commentators would call it.
Yeah.
And that's been the knock on him by a lot of people is that, yeah, his kicking for goal has not been great. Yeah, he missed, I guess, shanked one reasonably badly at one point. But yeah, I feel like his kicking for goal has improved and he's more confident.
Yeah, I think that's the case as well. I mean, we were all worried about when, Danaher came to the club. They're both left footers, they're both kind of similar players. Is they're going to affect Hipwood? But I actually think he's stood up since Danaher got here, and it's only improved him, to be honest.
Yeah, look, it took him a little while to come back from the ACL. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
and he did bulk up a bit, which I always was worried about him bulking up. I remember back in the day when Fev put on a massive amount of muscle and he lost his speed.
Yeah.
And I was always worried that would happen to Hipwood. I think his legs look a hell of a lot bigger now. Obviously, all that work he did in rehab to come back after his knee. So he's probably lost his speed. But the plus side to that is he's now stronger in competing for the ball.
Yeah, and fans have to accept he's never going to be Jonathan Brown, and he was never meant to be Jonathan Brown.
Oh, look, who is? Let's face it.
Exactly.
That's boys' own stuff, But look, he's Eric Hipwood, and I think he was one of our better players. The AFL fantasy and whatever, don't mention it, but the club had him, I think, second or third best in the match report. So that's good. So another guy, my next tick is Harris Andrews.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Probably you're going to sense a pattern here by the end of it that the really tall guys, other than one of them. But a lot of people on the socials were questioning his effort early on in the game. And during that patch where Freo really started to get on top in the second quarter.
Yeah.
But he actually had a pretty reasonable game. And I know Freo's big keys sort of did pretty well. But he was getting up the ground, repelled a number of attacks. He got some intercepts. He actually did some runs off halfback a couple of times.
Yeah.
Which is always funny to watch. He does look like a baby giraffe when he runs, but I love him to bits, so I love watching him run. And he's one of the best kicks in our team too, which, if he's got the ball and he's running sort of towards the forward half, he's going to at least kick it to where we're either got a guy on his own or we've got extra guys. He's not just going to bomb it long like a lot of guys do.
No, he's a good decision maker, and he's not a glory seeker either. Like he's not going to be like, I reckon I can get it from here. He'll make the smart choice, and he'll queue up someone. So I always appreciate him for that.
Yeah, and look, I felt up the other end, Alex Pearce was pretty similar in the first half for Freo. Played a good captain's game down back. I feel when Freo started to really come at us, Harris started to play that similar sort of captain's game down back and just try and stop the bleeding as much as he could.
Yeah.
So yeah, had him in there in my ticks. The next one is Big Joe Danaher.
Yep. Okay.
I don't think. Look, people will argue with me on that one, but look,
the only pushback I'd have is so he finished strong. And he had a lot of field work throughout the game, but he did have some really big quiet periods.
Yeah, but look, and he had some Joe moments at times as well where he tried to do some things that kind of ended up looking pretty silly because they didn't work. But had they worked, well, then we'd all be saying what a game he's had. But I still think overall, like he's kicked 3 goals. That's his job. He's got 20-odd disposals. I'll go into his stats a little bit more later because I'm going to talk about him again later.
Yep.
But, again, like the good outweighed the bad with him again last night. It didn't win us the game, but it kind of kept us in the game what he did do.
Yeah.
And
he got two late goals or like right at the end. That really kind of kept it from being embarrassing. It was a little embarrassing either way, but it could have been very embarrassing at the end.
His job's to kick 2+ goals a game, and he did that.
Yeah.
So that's all for the ticks, but I want to give some honourable mentions to Zorko, who just keeps on keeping on. Like, for a bloke who's on a 1-year contract and was going to play about half a season, I hope he plays more than half a season because he's killing it at the moment.
He looks like he's capable of it right now. He's only played 2 games, not counting the preseason matches, but it's a long season. But we do have the luxury of 2 buys, although one of them is quite early in the season. So I think it's definitely within his wheelhouse. Like, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, look, and even if they do give him a few weeks off, maybe not quite Gunston and Rich style last year, but he's not going to drop himself, is he? Like, let's face it. But
no way.
Even if they do give him some time off late in the season and then bring him fresh in for the finals, if we make it, when we make it,
of course,
I'm not opposed to that. So, and like Noah Answer, I've already mentioned him earlier. Like, I felt that he did pretty well. Stas early on was absolutely on fire. He had a bit of a point to prove, I think. What that point was, I don't know, but it was good to see him. He was everywhere. And these other 2 guys, I haven't mentioned them previously this season, really, but Wilmot and Dunkley, they little quiet achievers for mine this season.
Statistically, they both had really good games.
Yeah,
and I remember seeing them both do pretty good things throughout the game. Dunkley, a lot of people, assumed that he would come in and he would just be another Neil, but him being almost a purely defensive midfielder has really benefited us.
Yeah, and look, he's a guy who, like, obviously Luke Bevo's a fool, and we all know this anyway, but it was exemplified by the fact that he played Dunkley in the ruck, played him in a forward pocket, played him on the bench, played him in the VFL. No wonder
he really didn't know what to do with him.
No wonder he wanted to get out of there. But he's been in our top 2 ranked players in the first 2 rounds, and you didn't see a lot of that last year. Like, statistically, he wasn't really up there, but it was what he was doing. Like that game on Cripps last year, for example, when we beat Carlton at Marvel Stadium. That was unbelievable what he did there. Like, he didn't get much of the ball, but like, he just dominated a bloke who normally gets a lot of the ball.
Yeah, and the thing with Dunkley is he's not going to win a Brownlow anytime soon, but he wouldn't surprise me if he finished his career with 4 best and fairest, that kind of thing.
I wish he had.
He would get really heavily appreciated internally. Obviously he was best and fairest at the Bulldogs when he came to us, but I can definitely see him even overtaking guys like Neil and Andrews and, like that internally in a best and fairest, where the club really shows who they appreciate the most, not just the media fluffing up people who, for the Brownlow.
Well, they've put him in the leadership group this year too, which is a really big sign that they appreciate what he brings to the table.
Yeah, he's officially a vice captain along with Huey.
Yeah, and I kind of wish he did win the Brownlow last year because I had a lazy $5 on him. So I'm the last of the big spenders, the big $5 limit. So all right, we'll get into your crosses. I'm interested to see what you've got here.
Yeah, no, definitely. One thing I do want to mention before that, though, is, we were talking about Oscar McInerney a bit earlier. I just had a read through the stats while we were going through, and maybe statistically he didn't have as bad game as we thought. He's listed as the second most clearances of any player behind Sarong for the entire game. I would not have guessed that, but the stats say that he got 7 and Sarong got 10.
I wouldn't have thought he was the second most clearances, but he does win a lot of ruck clearances.
He's also got 40 hitouts, way more than anyone else.
He's always trying. He's always trying to pump the ball forward. But there was another stat mentioned. Well, it might have been in the Carlton game. and it came up on the socials last night that people feel as though opposition midfielders rove off his taps a little bit more than what we would like.
Yeah, I do notice that.
But that's not his fault. That's on our mids to be two-way players there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah,
so I've got. So let's get into my crosses.
Yeah.
So I'll take the pessimistic route. So for my first one, slow and lethargic. So this is mainly after the first quarter. We had a pretty decent first quarter, although it was kind of inflated a little bit by some free kicks that were somewhat questionable, I guess. But you're always happy to get them. So we had a pretty good first quarter, but it was all pretty downhill from there. But we just looked slow and lethargic. I didn't think that we were chasing. It was just really hard to see, and the boys don't have the excuse of being too tired. It's only 2 games into the season.
Yeah. Do you think? I don't know if it was you I spoke to about this or another mate last night, but I know I spoke to a Collingwood mate about this this morning. Do you think that the shorter preseason for us and them has had a bearing on it?
Well, so I've got my 5 crosses, but I've also got a big, kind of a question mark at the end. So we'll loop back to that one because it ties into my question mark. But yes, I do have a suspicion on that one. So my second cross is getting ahead and then giving up. So something that we did this week, not a massive lead, but we did do it again. And then last week, obviously, a bit of a bigger lead. And I did talk last week about that being a bad behavior that we have had in previous seasons, not so much 2023, but certainly in a lot of the early final seasons that we had under Fagan, and we seem to be getting back into that old bad behavior.
Yeah.
So big cross on that one for me, and a big watch going forward.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall when they talk about that in their meetings.
Definitely.
I know that they have a hell of a lot of meetings. Fagan loves it. Some of the boys in the leadership group apparently love their meetings as well.
Yeah.
I would just love to be there to hear what they talk about.
Yeah.
And maybe try and get inside their heads. I'm putting my coach's head on here. I know. I know I haven't coached an AFL team, but I think I've coached about 250 games of footy, so I know a little bit.
Yeah. Yep.
Not saying I quite have that level of understanding, but yeah, like just to try and get inside the heads of, what happens when this is happening? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? Is it a message from the coaches? Is it just something that the boys instinctively do? I don't know, because I feel back when we weren't really that good, the times that we did win, back in the Lepage era, part of the Voss era, when we were losing by 100 points most weeks, the games we did win, I felt we really put the foot on the jugular in those games.
Yes.
And even remember those couple of wins against Hawthorn early in Fagan's sort of period, we did that there as well.
Yeah, it always only seemed to be against them though.
Yeah, but like notice how it's been talked about a lot how since we've been good and they're being bad, it's gone the other way. But
yeah.
But yeah, look, it's one of the things that we seem to be doing. Even like I guess there was a game against Gold Coast a couple of years ago where we were probably 115 up and won by 70. There was one against Freo where we were 50 odd up. This might have been during the COVID era, and we won by about 15 or 20. Geelong last year.
Yeah, and it's it's a tough one because you can't. It's hard to complain about we only won by 70 instead of 100 130 or whatever. But it's like to give up 5 or 6 goals like that in quick succession, like no matter how far ahead you are, you got to get that out of your system.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'd love to win by 70 every week.
That'd be nice.
If you're listening, God, I'd love you to do some work upstairs. Make that happen. But yeah, all right. So go on. What do you got next?
And then so my third cross is no individual accountability. So there was so many instances that I noticed where individual guys would go, "Nah, too hard, not my job. I'm not going to run for that. Someone else can get it." Things like that. and it was all night, and it was all last week as well.
Yeah.
So massive cross there, because you need to be the guy that gets in there and gets it done. Don't leave it for someone else, and that's a big cross for me. The next one is just Jared Berry. Jared Berry's a cross for me, mainly because, and I pointed out a specific incident to you during the game. We were talking, but I've noticed it a lot. If there's someone running past him, he won't go in for the tackle. He'll kind of put a lazy arm out to the side,
Yeah,
and he'll go, "Oh, he got past me," and then he'll just give up, and then that person usually runs on to set up a passage.
Tries to corral the guy flapping his arms around a bit.
Yeah, it's like he tries to distract him instead of actually trying to tackle him. Things like that. So I found that very frustrating, and it's not the first time I've seen him do it. It's kind of these half efforts that he gives off instead of getting in there, and he's advertised as this big tough guy and all that sort of stuff, but we don't see it as often as we probably should. And my last cross is, and this was something that I was mentioned last week that I was going to keep an eye on to see if anyone did, and it was that no one stepped up in Neil's absence.
Yes.
And there was a lot of guys who had the opportunity to do it, including a lot of guys that are fighting for spots in the team and that have, due to injury, have been given a chance. And none of the guys that have got concrete positions in the team stepped up and made that position theirs and go, I'm going to throw the team on my back and I'm going to make this happen. There was no one. No one.
So looking at the guys we had running through the midfield, Jared Lyons I felt was serviceable without being damaging.
Yep.
I don't know how much of the ball he got, but like he kind of he copped a head knock early, so
he got 25 disposals, but
yeah.
I'm not sure about the efficiency of those, and I'm not sure if they led to anything. It didn't feel like he had a lot of impact.
Yeah, look, it probably felt the same as what Brayshaw felt to me for Freo, where he seemed to be in. I guess I can't remember seeing much of Brayshaw, but I sort of, with the headband or the bandage around his head, Lyons was pretty easy to pick up.
Yes.
But yeah, look, I felt he was sort of serviceable, but he wasn't. And he did actually get a couple of big tackles in too, that I can recall. But it wasn't Neil-like, as you said. McCluggage early on and a little bit late, but he had a big quiet patch.
Yeah, he didn't really do enough for me. And someone who I mentioned two guys last week that I wanted to see big games from, and one of them kind of had a big game. The other one that didn't and should have stepped up is Cam Rayner.
Yeah.
Very quiet, and this would have been a perfect opportunity for him as a guy who doesn't really want to play forward but gets forced to play forward, and he actually wants to be a midfielder. This would have been the perfect opportunity for him to go, all right, I'll step in and I will be the guy that gets this done, and he didn't do it.
Yeah, and look, one of the things I really looked at with Rayner last night, whenever the camera panned on him, was his facial expressions. And I don't think he feels pretty much what you've just said, like he's being played where he should be playing or wants to be playing. He seemed to look like, oh, yeah, really, like, is this where they're going to put me? There was a lot of talk, not just from us and like from the general footy media, a lot of Lions fans, get him in the midfield, give him a crack, get that big, strong body bursting through packs.
He's so strong and explosive, but it's so seldom that he puts it to good use.
Have you ever shaken hands with him? Like, have you ever met him at a family day or anything like that?
I've met him once in person, but I can't recall if I shook his hand. I probably would have. But he's a big fella. He's bigger than you think he is.
Yeah, well, my hand is still broken from the first time I met him in 2018. Like, he is really strong.
Yeah.
And, like, he is deceptively big. Like,
and he's only gotten bigger since then.
Yeah, well, when he first got drafted, I bumped into Daniel Merritt at a women's team fan day.
Love that.
The source is a great man. I could talk about him for ages, and maybe I will have to during the buy round. But yeah, like I was chatting to him, I said, "What do you reckon about Rayner?" Like I've seen a little bit of him in the under-18s, and he goes, "First thought, geez, he's big." He goes like, "Oh, I thought he was probably like a Tom Rockcliffe size guy," and I said, "Yeah, I thought the same thing." He goes, "But no, he's a beast."
He's about 6'3" or something, isn't he? He's quite
he's
quite tall.
like around about that 189, 190 mark, I reckon.
Yeah.
But he's he's thick set. He's got thick legs. His arms, like his
He's a unit, and
guns.
he could do so much damage if he
Yeah,
just applied himself a bit more in that position. But he just
he's
kind of
probably
floats around and waits for something to happen.
he's probably like a Jake Stringer, Ollie Wines type size guy.
Mm.
And we see what those guys do with their bodies. They just break packs open, but they get given the opportunity. I don't think Rayner does.
Yeah.
And that's for the other guys in the rotation. We spoke about Dunkley. Like he did. Look, he was serviceable, did his job. Robertson, well, we don't know if he was tagging or not. I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm positive that Dunkley was tagging for almost the entire game. So
yeah,
I don't think we would have put two guys on tag. So that leads me to believe that Dev probably wasn't tagging for at least a large portion of the game.
Yeah, and look, I don't know. Like, I really felt that he would have sort of jumped out there and really taken his opportunity to try and fight his way into the what do we call it, 22, 23 these days.
Yeah.
I don't think he took that opportunity, and he may find himself out of the team next round.
Yeah.
I think if it came down to him and Lyons, I think they'll look at it and say, well, Lyons got a lot more of the ball and had a bigger impact. So
it will be very interesting to see when Neil comes back who makes way. Because he's coming. If he's fit, he's coming straight back in. We need him.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's going to be interesting because I mean, it's no Ensworth's probably safe because we lost McKenna and we lost Coleman, so we kind of have to have him there. But yeah, Jared Lyons, Kyle Lohman, Dev Robertson, it's all kind of a bit question marky with those three.
So I'm just going to chuck in one more thing, a couple of stats that relate to your Lockie Neal situation here. Mm. So the previous two games against Freo that we won, he got around about the 15 clearance mark across the two games.
He does love playing against his old team.
And, well, I'll get to that too in a sec.
Mm.
And 35-ish contested possessions across those two games.
Yeah,
now, that's a lot of contested ball, and that's what we missed.
Yeah, that's a lot to not be in the game. Yeah,
we really missed that. Now, on that, so I was listening to a couple of WA media guys talking this morning. Apparently, he likes to miss games against his old club. But, 21, he was injured. But other than that, I don't think he has.
I don't think he's missed too many.
Yeah, just when he was his ankle in 21, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, he did have a crooked shoulder at one point, but I still think he played against Freo. So, I've just reeled off the stats for his the last two games we played against them previous to this one that he played in. So, I don't know. People like to bring up narratives to suit themselves. And just one last thing on that too. You mentioned Lohman.
Yes.
What do you make of Lohman from this game?
Yeah. So what? He played about half a game.
Yeah. So he came on at the start of the third quarter.
Yeah. So he was pretty quiet. But I did notice a few efforts and double efforts that he put out there to try and to showcase himself a little bit more.
And he nearly got himself a goal as well.
Very nearly. I was rooting for him to get it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, there's a few guys in the team that I desperately want to just flick a switch and just be that guy that I think they can be. And Lohman's one of them.
Yeah, well, you did say that last week as well.
Yeah, and I hope he doesn't get dropped. I hope he gets. I said last week, and I said it a few times. I kind of waffled on a bit more than I should have, but guys like that, you need to give him a few games in a row, and I hope he doesn't get dropped.
Yeah, look, I think the fact that and if depending on what happens with Fletcher's shoulder, there could be a potential spot for him.
Yep.
Or maybe
or Tunstall.
Yeah, maybe Lohman forces Berry out of the team I don't know. Maybe trains the house down or something. But yeah, I want to see Tunstall get in.
I think it would take over a lot for Fagan to drop Barry. I think he's usually the first picked every week. Whether or not he should or shouldn't be, that's another question. But I think he's Fagan's best mate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to speak too negatively about the boys. I'm sure they're copping enough of it as it is. But
yeah,
he was played far from his best football the last two games. Probably his last three games. The grand final, he wasn't great either.
Yeah. I tell you what, I will be watching more. And it hasn't started this weekend, the VFL, but I will be watching more of them this year because I really want to see if that Logan Morris guy is going to be something that he's been rumored to be from his first few preseason hitouts that he apparently did extremely well in.
He looked good in one of the intra-club games, but I mean, everyone does. So
yeah.
But yeah, look, he had a bit of sort of beast mode style action as a forward in the under 18s.
Yep.
I think it's still under 18s, or is it under 19s these days? I don't even know anymore. Yeah, like he's obviously a decent size sort of guy. Where he would fit into our AFL team, that's an interesting question in itself because it's probably Zach Bailey's the similar sort of role, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean, Bailey did kick 2 goals. He did make a lot of silly mistakes throughout the game, but that seems to just be part of his game, like it is part of Joe's game. But if he can kick, 1 or 2 every week, then it's kind of hard to displace him.
Yeah, well, look, if your half-forward flanker kicks 2 goals, he's had a pretty good game, hasn't he?
That's right.
But yeah, you want him to bring that defensive pressure as well to lock the ball in, which he was doing a lot in previous years. I think he did it, probably last year and the year before. So,
yeah.
But yeah, like Logan Morris, I like him. Big raps on Zach Ostelski as well, Zane. But we drafted him as a forward, I believe.
Yeah, I think most of the guys who got in the draft last year were forwards, weren't they?
Yeah, but so he played more as a ruckman in the Waffle Colts last year. So I think it'll be interesting to see what we do with him in the VFL.
I think he's also injured at the moment as well.
Yeah, well, we don't have Wiley Buzzer this year or Tom Fullerton.
Is Buzzer gone? I didn't know that. I knew Fullerton was gone.
Yeah. So Buzzer's gone to a Quaffle club, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like it's a shame because he's like big body. I thought he played pretty well, like in the VFL. Thought he could have been a chance for a rookie contract with the AFL team at one point when a couple of guys are getting injured.
Yeah, I did think he was a chance. I'm not going to lie, because we don't really have any backup key forwards. We do have a lot of ruckmen who can kind of go forward.
Yeah, Henry Smith.
And that Hawthorn player we just got, Ryan, wasn't it?
Brendan Ryan. No, look, he has something about him. But I think he's basically, his role is if Hipwood or Danaher miss a game for some reason, he comes in. I don't think he comes in for anyone else.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's why they got him.
And look, we did need someone like that, especially with Fullerton going up.
And he played some local footy where I live and carved it up. In a pretty tough local comp, I must say. So, and I watched a couple of his, just because I watch a lot of footy, I saw him play a couple of games for Hawthorn. And, like, you remember when Sam Skinner made his debut for us and did that one thing that everybody remembered?
Yes.
Well, Brendan Ryan, he did that one thing against Collingwood last year for Hawthorn. That's the only thing everyone talks about, but it was that good. Like I think he rove the ball off the pack and kicked the goal. For a 200-centimeter guy, that was really good. So, but I would like to see him maybe put some pressure on the other guys. Maybe try and force his way in for a game, or at least get it in as an emergency.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the team's not going to get better if the guys that are in the VFL aren't pushing and they're just content being VFL players. And it's also not going to get better if the guys up the top have no fear of getting dropped and they just go, oh, well, there's always next week and, it doesn't really matter. Oh, I had a pretty shit game tonight, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Oh, they've got to be, there's someone coming for my spot. I need to work harder. Well, and the guys underneath need to be going, he's having not a great patch of footy. I reckon I can do better than him. I'm going to prove that in the VFL.
Well, have a look at the Suns last year. They won the premiership in their VFL, but they had a lot of guys really stepping up and putting pressure on the guys in the AFL team. And when Hardwick went there, that was the first thing, apparently, from what I've heard, that he said was, you guys are not safe anymore. You AFL guys, nobody is getting picked every week unless you perform every week.
Because I think we need a bit of that, to be honest.
Yeah. Did you see at halftime they showed a bit of footage of Fagan and Longmuir mic'd up at their individual training sessions?
Yeah, very different.
Yeah, the way Fagan spoke to Rayner reminds me so much of myself when I was coaching under 10s one year. I think he sort of, I don't want to say this word, but I think he babied him a bit. Whereas Longmuir was a bit tougher on his boys.
Yep.
And I noticed Ken Hinkley, I watched the Port Adelaide West Coast game as well, and they showed Ken Hinkley, and he kind of joked around about Zach Butters being his favourite player, but he put pressure on other guys. He was putting them on the spot with some of the things he was asking them.
Yeah.
And, I just felt...
I've always thought that Fagan would be, and he has been in the past, a great GM.
Yeah.
But I think he would be, as a right-hand man, because that's what he was to, Clarkson, and Clarkson was much tougher on his boys, and, he's had his faults, and I'm not saying he's a perfect human being or a perfect coach or anything like that. But, yeah, it is interesting to see, the coaching method of him just, being very cuddly with the boys and just trying to be their mate. And, that's fine if you got that wrong, mate. There's always next time. There's not always next time.
You don't know if that's what they're really like either. We all know when you've got a microphone in front of you, are you really yourself? Look, I try to be.
Yeah.
Probably don't swear as much.
That's the only difference for me on the podcast. Yeah. Keep it G-rated a bit more.
Yeah.
But my thoughts are honest. Everything I've said, I truly feel.
Yeah, same. Look, my neighbours learnt a few more swear words last night. I kind of dragged up some of my ancestral heritage to swear in different languages. I was not happy at some points, but yeah, look, I guess we've probably waffled on about that stuff enough now. And
I just have one question mark that I wanted to touch on, because I did reference it earlier in the podcast that I would come back to it.
Yeah,
and it's kind of my final point. So I had my 5 crosses, but I also had a question mark, and it was: is the performance that we're seeing now, or lack of performance, is it tied to a short preseason, or is it tied to grand final demons?
Well, the team that beat us in the grand final are in the same position as us at the moment. And I would actually say across 4 quarters of each of their games, they've played worse than us.
Yeah.
We've had, in the first game, I reckon 20 minutes of the best football we've ever played.
Yeah.
And we had a good 15-minute patch in the second game. I don't think Collingwood would have had any of that. So that brings us to, I guess, the pre-season length.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go back to 2021. And I know there's different factors in this because of the COVID lockdowns and the hubs and the restrictions and whatever. But also, to remember, the grand final was a lot later in the year in 2020.
Yep. That's true.
It was played elsewhere to where it normally is.
Yep.
And... I don't know how long they hubbed in Queensland for after the grand final, but I don't think they came. Well, both teams are Victorian, so I don't think either of them came back to Victoria straight away. And then they started the next season in 21 pretty much around about the same time as they usually do.
Yeah.
And Richmond were woeful.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, for a team that had just won back-to-back flags, they were woeful.
Yeah.
And also got a lot of injuries early on. Like they were like a West Coast level injury list early on in 21. So perhaps it is the shorter preseason is an issue.
Yeah.
And
I did wonder that.
us and Collingwood also played in that extra earlier round.
True. Yeah,
So
we've played two now, and 10 of the teams have only played just the one game so far.
how far did Sydney go in the finals last year? I can't remember.
I think they got knocked out in the prelim.
Was it a prelim or the
I think
semis?
so.
Who did we play in the prelim? We played Carlton. Who did?
Yeah, we knocked Carlton out.
Collingwood played the Giants.
So they must have gotten to an elimination final.
Yeah, so the Giants have been up and about. They only had one extra week off than what we did.
Yeah, but they're having a really good start to the season.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, maybe Adam Kingsley has finally put the keys in the ignition of the Ferrari and put it on.
Yeah.
Look. To be honest, I wouldn't be upset if they won a flag. I'd just like us to win one before them.
Look, if it's not us this year, God, I hope it's not Collingwood or Richmond again.
Yeah.
But I'd really like it to be one of the three teams that hasn't won one. So that includes the Dockers, who just smashed us as well.
Yeah, look, I don't think the Dockers are ever going to win one. You can screen record that anyone who's listening and play it back to me if they ever do. But yeah, look, if the Suns, Giants, or I guess the Swans win one. I know they've won a few in my lifetime now, but if they win one sort of in the near future, I'm not going to be too upset. And for you guys outside of Victoria, I'm sure that will be a nice little cherry on top to see.
It's always good not having one of the big four Vic clubs win, in my experience. Obviously a bit distraught over last year, but the 2018, the Eagles winning over the Pies, that was a good one for me. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Well, for me being an ex-West Aussie, I've been in Victoria too long now to still say I am a West Aussie, but for me being an ex-West Aussie, I was growing up when the Eagles first came in, and so I kind of adopted them as a second team because they were the only team I could go and watch every week.
Yep.
Aside from my waffle team, seeing them win that one, it felt good, and it felt good that they beat Collingwood more so than anything else.
Yep.
I just wish we had done it too,
but I mean, only a kick. There's only a kick in it. But anyway, it's a new year. It's a new season. So
how old were you when we did the three-peat?
Good question. Was that 2003 was the last one? I think about 8 or 9.
Yeah, so you deserve to get more.
Yeah, so I remember them, but it's been a big drought since. Those are some early memories. So I don't remember them in their entirety.
I was 21, 22, 23.
Yeah,
that's so as an adult, I've seen 3 premierships. So I feel for the people in that younger generation that had to put up with the Lepich years and let's say the Voss years as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, look.
My dad was always really good because he was he was a big Bears fan because he jumped on the Bears when they first started, and then he was a big Roger Merritt fan all the way through, and then big Alistair Lynch fan, which ironically the users, but the listeners might not know this, but Al stands for Alistair. I was named after Alistair Lynch, and Dad's been a big Lions fan ever since. And I remember after the 2003, we went to the Gabba and we got to meet all the premiership players, and all the trophies were on the table, and we got pictures and had a signed book and all that sort of stuff. So I have a really great memory of my dad bringing me to that. And funnily enough, I haven't seen Al Stilic too many times in my life, but the next time I saw him after that was the very day at the very hospital that my firstborn child was born at.
Oh,
I ran into him as I went to get something from my car. He was walking into the hospital, and I had a very quick chat with him. That was that was an incredible moment for me. And he's a good man, Alistair Lynch.
Yeah, he's look. I had the best of both worlds. I had him at Fitzroy, and then well, look, we sort of had a bit of a family connection to the Bears, and it's a player you've mentioned, Roger Merritt.
Yep.
So he's a relative of mine on my dad's side, and as are a few of the other Merritts who have played in the league over the years. But
yep,
he's the one we like the most. So we used to watch, because the Bears were always on Sunday afternoons on TV as well.
Yep.
So we'd sit around and watch because Roger was playing, and then Alistair Lynch was playing as well, and I couldn't hate him for leaving Fitzroy. They couldn't afford to pay him, so he had to do what was right for him. And then, of course, we had the merger, and I got him back.
Yeah, it was fated to be.
Yeah, that's it. And I loved him as a footballer, and seems like a really good bloke. And apparently, I of course would have noticed myself, but apparently he's a pretty good looking man. So
he's a handsome man.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's getting a little bit late in the real world where I live.
Yep.
Still pretty early up there, but
yeah. So I'm in Queensland for those listening who may not know. So we are in different time zones.
Yes, I'm down in G-Town, where if Patrick Dangerfield farts, the Geelong Advertiser writes 16 pages about it.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me at all.
People think the West Australian love affair with Harley Reid and Nick Nat is huge. They get one page. Patrick Dangerfield, Joel Selwood once drove down the main street of Barwon Heads where he lives, and there was about 18 pages of paparazzi photos in the Advertiser. So, yeah, I don't want to ever hear anyone complain about about the Melbourne club getting biased coverage in the media. Come to Geelong, you'll see what it's really like.
Yeah, I think we have the opposite problem with the Courier Mail up here. I think, do you remember during COVID when there was that toilet paper shortage and they were printing extra pages at the back of the newspaper to use as toilet paper? I think those are the ones that they use to put the lines on these days.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, up there, you get a Broncos burger at McDonald's, don't you?
Yep. Yeah, it's just basically a bit of lettuce and beetroot on a quarter pounder, I think.
Yeah, which just pretty much sums up the Broncos as a football club, let's face it. But probably going to get a bit of hate for that.
Oh, well. I love as it is.
But hey, we don't, like in Victoria, we don't get any Collingwood burgers or Essendon burgers or anything like that. I don't know. Well, the Collingwood burger would probably just be a piece of meat and maybe some tomato sauce. A few cigarette butts, maybe. I don't know.
A couple of loose teeth.
Yeah. Hey, I can't say much. I had one knocked out playing cricket recently. So,
well, at least there was, for good reasons instead of the usual reasons that Collingwood fans are missing teeth.
Yeah, well, that's right. All right. Well, let's get into the players of the week. I'll let you go with yours first.
Yeah, look, I think we've got a bit of an overlap here. Mine was Cal Archie. I just put one player of the week because I'm probably just going to pick my favorite.
That's all we need.
And I know that this is turning into a bit of a Cal Archie fan cast, but I just really appreciate what he does. And once again, he didn't let me down. I mean, he didn't, wasn't a game winner, and his stats aren't fantastic, but he just always gives it his all, and I appreciate guys like that.
And the only other thing too is it's good to see him in the team early in the year as well.
Yes, he doesn't have to fight for 10 weeks in the VFL and then, blow it away for the rest of the year, and then everyone goes, why wasn't he in the team to begin with? Like that happens every year. But
they learn
from that.
Like last year when he came in, he just went full beast mode as soon as he got in the AFL team. I think he got a concussion at one point, but and I feel as though a lot of the boys lift around him as well.
Yep.
You just sort of, when you see him milling around at both AFL and VFL level, you see guys, they kind of gravitate to him.
Yep.
And, well, us too as fans, I guess, as well. So,
it seems like he's probably one of the last guys picked by Fagan when he's picking his 23, but I would probably put him in my top 5 picked, or first 5 picked if I was picking the team.
Yeah, well, that's it. I would too. And I think a lot of our fans now, he copped a bit of a rough deal early on, but I think, a lot of our fans now are on board with us as well.
Yep.
And,
I see a lot of love for Cal online.
Yeah, so I went with him last game, so I thought I'd go with someone different this time.
Okay, yep, good.
And I've already mentioned this bloke, and I kind of hinted at it a bit earlier, and I've gone with Joe Danaher.
Yep, okay.
So I'm not a big statistics guy generally, but I had a look.
It's the vibe.
All right, so what do we call him, a full forward or a centre-half forward? I tend to think of him as a centre-half forward myself.
Yeah.
So if you got told before a game started that your centre-half forward's going to get it 20 times, kick 3 goals, and get 645 metres gained, you'd be pretty happy.
You'd be pretty chuffed with that. You'd be going, mission accomplished there.
You're not going to say no to that, right?
Yeah.
That's what Joe got. Now, he did a bit of pinch hitting in the ruck, not as much as he usually does. Well, I don't know. Maybe he did, but maybe there weren't as many ball ups or centre bounces or whatever in that period. But so he only went to 17 ruck contests. He lost 15 of them. But for a bloke who's not actually a first choice ruckman, I'm not fussed.
Well, he's got 2 hit outs, but look, I don't think it's that important to his game.
He did get up the ground. He went inside 50, I think 10 or 11 times. Out of 20 disposals, half of them have been pumping the ball from outside 50 into 50.
Yeah.
You can't complain about that. I mean, well, you can if he kicks it out of bounds on the full every time, but he didn't.
No, he had a very good game. I think it's a good pick by you.
Yeah, look, he got him and Hip, like I said, got a lot of hate on the socials, and I just having a look. So he was our second highest rated player in fantasy points as well for the game. So I don't know if I mentioned it before, but our top 5 are Dunkley, Danaher, Andrews, McCluggage, and Zorko.
So about right.
Yeah, so there's four of those 5 are guys that I've pumped up a bit tonight, and McCluggage I sort of pumped up for his early game.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like that's how it went down.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. He was fairly quiet, but he had a lot of, patches where he did a lot of good work, but his consistency wasn't there for what we know that he can do. So, yeah.
Yeah. So on the VFL, does that start this coming week?
Not this weekend, next weekend.
So it starts Easter weekend?
I believe so.
Yeah, so we, I believe, play Collingwood Easter weekend.
Our first game again, the VFL was Essendon. I remember that.
Okay.
We play Essendon's VFL team.
So maybe it is this week because...
Oh, it is. You're right. It is this weekend. I was thinking because it wasn't last weekend because we missed round 1. So we are playing Essendon on Saturday 23rd at 12:05 at their home ground.
Oh, right. So it's here in Victoria. I might go.
Yeah.
I'll try and go to that. I don't have...
Definitely going to try and watch it because that sounds like it could be a good one.
Yeah, well, so for the Easter round, I knew there was VFL because we're going to watch Williamstown and Coburg up at Coburg. It's a bit of a Good Friday tradition going to watch Williamstown. They usually play Port Melbourne, which is a bit of a, I guess, Victorian version of the Battle of the Bridge because they're on opposite sides of the Westgate Bridge to each other.
Yep.
And a mate of mine is actually a line coach at Port Melbourne last year and this year, but unfortunately, they're not playing each other. But it's not a Williamstown or Port Melbourne podcast, so yeah.
Not yet, anyway.
No, but actually, speaking of Williamstown too, so Oscar McDonald, who did play for them last year, he went down with a knee injury playing for the Dockers last night. I noticed I read a press release just before you came online, and it said that Freo haven't confirmed what his knee injury is yet.
Okay, so it hasn't been ruled as an ACL or anything like that yet.
Yeah, and like,
interesting.
The commentators were very optimistic about it last night, but it didn't look good.
No, that was a bad one. Look, they had a few bad ones. I can't remember his name, but the fellow that got knocked out and had to get stretched off. That was a
big hit. And interestingly, we got the free kick out of it.
Yeah, and I don't think McCarthy got in trouble for that, which he shouldn't have anyway.
No,
two men with eyes on the ball.
All right, well, I'm done. You got anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think that was all my points. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I mean, obviously, there's no game to preview this weekend. I mean, there's a VFL. But, no senior game. So I think, we'll meet up next week to preview the Collingwood game.
Yeah, we might put something together early and maybe, I don't know, look for a game where we beat Collingwood and beat them by a lot and have a talk about that or something.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Well, I was there in 2007 when we beat them by 90-something points. Mitch Clark kicked 5. Jared Brennan had a good game. And a Collingwood supporter threatened to punch me in the head.
So you got the full experience then.
Yeah, and also, so my girlfriend of the time, who was a Collingwood supporter, broke up with me the next morning.
Oh, jeez.
So
I think you dodged a bullet there, though, mate.
Oh, yeah. So maybe that's something we can look back on and try and find a replay and have a bit of a chat about that. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, no worries. Well, let's enjoy our week off with the bye. We can't lose.
Oh, it's a well-earned rest already, mate.
And look, if I head out to the VFL or you watch it or both, maybe we'll have a bit of a chat about that as well. See what we can
I'm open to that. I didn't watch many VFL games last year, but I want to watch a lot of them this year because there's a few guys I want to keep an eye on the progress of. Yeah,
because myself and my kids had a year of footy last year. We went to a fair bit of VFL footy, whether it was Williamstown. We went to Brisbane when they played in Victoria.
Yep.
A couple of Geelong games, and we even went to a couple of Essendon games for some God unknown reason.
I was going to say, you must have been desperate for content for that one.
I think we just happened to be driving past and saw some footy on and said, let's go get a hot dog and see who these young chaps are. But yeah, because I couldn't think of any other reason to watch Essendon unless we're playing them. But all right, we'll see how we go with the VFL and we might have a chat about that next week.
Sounds like a plan, mate.
All right, no worries. I will talk to you later.
Sounds good, mate. Until next time.
Yep.
Go Lions.